Red Smith Sports Award Banquet.
The main reason that this banquet was established was to honor at least 10 local area people who might not have been honored for the job they do to help in sports.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport.
Who has made a significant contribution to sports in the state of Wisconsin.
And also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure that I introduce this gentleman, a legend in his own mind, Art Holst. Okay, partner.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. That was a great introduction. That's the kind of introduction put Ed Garvey where he is today, and I want you to know I appreciate it. I've been introduced by a hell of a lot of people, but that's the first time I've ever been introduced by a billboard. That was a lot better than the introduction I had the other day in Indiana. I spoke for about 5,000 farmers over in Indiana. This farmer got up to introduce me. He looked at his notes. He says, "It says here our speaker needs no introduction." He said, "I hope that's true because I never heard of him before." Well, you're a good-looking audience. I was up in Alaska speaking to the Alaska Bankers Association. They were telling about a guy that was mushing out the Alaskan pipeline with his dog team. On the way out there, the lead dog died. Now, this is very bad for the lead dog. But it did represent a very pleasant change of scenery for the number 2 dog. And this is a very pleasant change of scenery for me tonight, and I didn't mean to compare you with the rear end of a dog, but I am delighted to be with you. Of course, every speaker that ever speaks for an audience says they're delighted to be with you. You never have a speaker in 22 years of running this Red Smith dinner. You've never had a speaker ever get up and say, "It's hell to be here. I'm sorry to be here." They're all happy to be here. But I flew in on Air Wisconsin, and when I tell you I'm happy to be with you, well, there's a ring of truth about that you don't ordinarily get from a speaker. Hell, I'm happy to be with anybody. I'm just happy to be on the ground. I got on that thing in Chicago. I didn't mind the radar, but the horn. And we taxied all the way. The interstate was busy. I was looking for the stewardesses and finally looked outside. There was one on each side of the airplane walking along with a picture of clouds. That's not what got me. What got me was the pilot. He came down the aisle. He had a compass on his arm with a mirror on it. I said, "What's that?" He said, it's a compass that shows you when you're lost." I said, "I know that, but what's the mirror for?" He said, "Well, stupid, you look in there, you can tell who's lost." Forrest Gregg just said, "I want one of those." Oh, dear. Well, about the only thing he didn't tell you was my age, and I bring that up because I was asking Jim Hanachik tonight. I made a couple of mistakes coming up here. I have to tell you that. I flew up, my wife and I flew up last night with Paul on the same flight, and I made the mistake of saying, "I'll flip you for dinner," and that's a mad thing. He said, "I have a deal with Pete. I don't do that. I haven't done that for 24 years, and tonight I said to Jim, pass the ketchup, and that's no good. I got a bottle of Miller beer instead, and it didn't do too well on the chicken. But I bring that up. I'm 64, Jim's 69, going to be 70. And I see some of you guys, now that I've passed 60, some of you out here have passed 60. Now that I've passed that milestone in my life, my whole life's upside down. Would you do that without the glasses? The National Football League has spies. They don't like pictures, do you? Don't like pictures of the officials with the glasses on. But I am past 60, and since I've passed 60, my whole life's upside down. I sit down to eat at night, I feel sexy. Go to bed, I feel hungry. I see some heads nodding around the room. I said to Bob, I said, how do you get so many of the older fellas out? He says, it's easy. We just tell them we're going to raffle off a prostate operation. I said, how'd you get the women out? He said, they came to see who'd win the prostate operation. Well, you've probably figured out by now that it's not going to be an intellectual presentation. I don't have the brains to make that kind of a talk. We'll start off even on that, Bob. And I was reminded... That was a little zinger I just stuck in there. Oh, yes. I was reminded of this lack that I have in the upper story during the conduct of my hobby or weekend profession. We were working a game right here in Green Bay. 1965, my second year in the league. Green Bay was playing the Chicago Bears. Look out, there's one Bear fan back there clapping. I can see him. You can tell a Bear fan, but you can't tell him much. Well, anyway. Sears was a rookie. Sears came through the line with the ball, and Ray Nitschke was playing middle linebacker for the Packers. Ray is a big bald guy, you know. I see a lot of fellows here in varying stages of baldness. Matter of fact, you saw Bob and Father Jansen exchange a few brief remarks under their breath. He said, pray for hair, Father, pray for hair. Don't feel bad. They don't put marble tops on cheap furniture, I'll tell you that. Well, anyway. As I say, I don't have too much up here, and Sayers came through the line with a golf ball, and Nitschke went to tackle him. When he did, he grabbed his face mask. That isn't fair, and that's why we're out there, and I threw the rag and stopped the clock. Told the referee, Norm Schachter, I said, I got number, what was Ray Nitschke's number? I've forgotten. 60. I got number 60 on the defense, pulling the face mask, personal foul, 15 yards. About that time, Nitschke jumped up. He looked down at me, he said, what? I said, get back in there and play football before I bite your head off. He said, if you do, you'll have more brains in your stomach than you have in your head. So I'm not here as an expert on any intellectual subjects, and I don't read a speech, ladies and gentlemen. I got over that a long time ago. We lost our preacher in our church, Father. Now, they get rid of some of them in the Protestant church. I'm a Presbyterian, and we lost our preacher. The pulpit committee got busy looking for a new guy. They found one. Everybody liked him, the women especially, because he was a handsome dog, and you could see the percentage of the congregation that was female going up every Sunday. But he had one very bad habit. He used to read all of his sermons word for word out of a little loose-leaf notebook. He'd get his nose down his notes in the morning, couldn't see him. Now, when you have a problem in the church, you appoint a committee. And they appointed a committee to do some creative thinking about how they could get this young man to overcome this problem. They got an idea. One Sunday, after he had placed his notebook up on the pulpit, they got him out in the study on some supposed problem of the church. And while they had him out there, one of the members of the committee slipped up into the pulpit, opened up the notebook, reached in, jerked out one of the sheets and wadded it up and stuck it in his pocket. Well, it happened that he was preaching on the subject of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he was going along with his nose down in his notes. He got down to the bottom of the page and he said, and Adam said to Eve, and he turned the page and he said, my God, there's a leaf missing. And so right then and there, I figured that never again was I going to read a speech. And I'd like to congratulate right now Jim Honachik. I had not had the pleasure of meeting Jim before on the Nice Guy Award. And Jim, isn't it a shame that we can't get these Nice Guy Awards while we're working? They don't like us when we're working. We have to retire for a few years to get them. And I'd like to congratulate Paul Hornung, who was playing when I started officiating in the league. I'm going to have more to say about that a little bit later. On the receipt of this 22nd annual Red Smith Award, and the first annual Red Miller Award. And to tell you how important that award is, Red got canned at Denver. Well, I also would like to mention another thing. Paul toasted this Fox River Valley. The 17,458th toast he has made in the Fox River Valley. But I feel a bit at home here in Appleton and the Appleton, Neenah, Kaukauna, Green Bay area, because you see, my first ball game in the National Football League was at Lambeau Field in Green Bay. On a sunny Sunday in 1964, when the Chicago Bears played the Green Bay Packers. There were 5 men on a crew at that time, and I was on the crew with Norm Schechter, Ed Marion, Joe Connell, who is now deceased, was our umpire. Herman Rohrig, who played for the Packers, was our field judge, and a new rookie back judge by the name of Art Holst. And they poked their nose in the dressing room. The producer from CBS poked his nose in the dressing room before the game, and we had the old dressing room up with a hot dog stand. He stuck his nose in the dressing room and had a few words for Schechter before we were going to go on the field. And just as an aside, he said, "Oh yes, we're using something different today. We're going to use what they call a videotape replay." And that was the first time they had used it. Not to help officiating, that was a long time ago. And our first reaction was, oh, something else to embarrass the officials. Hasn't happened that way. One of the greatest things that ever happened in the history of professional football. Gave you at home the opportunity to see that we are indeed always right. We knew it all along, but you need a little help. So we went on the field that day. And it was a wonderful day. It was a beautiful day. The Bears were the defending champions. If you'll think back about this day, Forrest and Paul and Fuzzy and some of the rest of you that are sitting here, if you think back about that day, it was a brisk wind blowing out of the north. It was abnormally cold for early September. The score was close. The Bears had the ball deep in their own territory, punting out of their own end zone with seconds left and a half. They kicked the ball. Elijah Pitts, the safety man for the Packers, number 22, stuck his arm over his head on his own 48-yard line. Ladies and gentlemen, at that time, one arm fully extended above the head was a signal for a what? Fair catch. Now they must wave it, but at that time it was just stick it up. 3 promises made right then. He says, "I promise if I catch the ball, I won't run with it." Now the guys coming down the field automatically promise, "We promise if we catch the ball, we won't tackle you." Now there's a third promise, that's from the officials. We say, "We promise if you birds break your promise, we're going to throw the flag." That's the third promise. All right, Pitts caught the ball. That stopped the clock. I looked at the watch. There were 4 seconds left in the half, and as I came up past the Green Bay bench, I heard somebody say, "We're going to free kick." Because you see, after a fair catch, you could put the ball in play with a snap, that's this way, or with a free kick, that's like a kickoff, like you start the game, except the difference from the kickoff that starts the game in 3 ways. You don't kick from the 35, then the 40, you kick from the mark of the catch. In this case, Green Bay's 48. Difference number 2, you cannot use a tee. But it's difference number 3 that talks about what this game really means, being awake to opportunity in life, because you see that free kick, if it goes over the crossbar and between the uprights, it's a field goal, and it counts 3 points. Well, we lined the Packers up on their own 48. The Bears didn't know what the hell was going on. We lined them up on the 42. On their own 42, somebody held the ball. Now, on that play, incidentally, I'll just stick a parenthesis in here. There's a true story. We stayed at the old Northland Hotel in Green Bay at that time, and we were coming out, only 5 officials then, so we could come out in a cab to the ballpark. And we were coming out in the cab, and Schechter was sitting with somebody up in the front, and I was sitting with Joe Connell and Herb Rohrig. He was sitting with Eddie Marion in the front seat. And as we were about halfway out to the ballpark from the Northland, Schechter turned around and he said, "Let's talk about that goofy play that's never been used, that free kick after a fair catch, and talk about our positions." And we talked about it, and he said, Art, I was brand new now. He said, Art, I have to go behind a kicker if they do this, so you've got to go down under the bar and call it. And I like that because I always like to be near the bar. Now we get there, and don't you know, you talk about preparation, don't you know that they called that play? We're going to free kick. So here we were out there. Somebody held the ball. And number 5 for the Green Bay Packers, a great halfback, now in the Hall of Fame, and then the kicker, sitting 2 seats to my right, and little did I know that I would be here tonight when he received this precious Red Smith Award, kicked the ball. That brisk wind caught it. He didn't hit it too good. It was kind of a knuckleball kick. Typical of yours. And but the wind was with him, as it always is. On his tombstone, they're going to put, the wind was always with him. That brisk wind caught it, blew it. It just cleared the crossbar. Rosie Taylor was the safety man for the Bears. He was not a very tall guy, about 5'10", but she was a jumping jack. He jumped up and tried to block the thing. Now, you can't, the goalposts were on the goal line at that time, and you can't imagine what was going through my mind, because if he bats that ball toward his own goal, that was a foul. If you bat the ball either way in the end zone, it's an illegal bat, and it's a foul. So I was going to have to throw the flag if that sucker batted that ball. Well, he took a swing at it. Thank God he missed it. The ball just cleared the crossbar. Field goal. Ladies and gentlemen, the first time it had ever been done in the history of the National Football League, and I had the privilege to call it. He had the privilege to kick it. And the only other time it has ever been done was in 1968 when the Chicago Bears returned the compliment to the Green Bay Packers and beat them on a field goal by Mac Percival, 48 yards, following a fair catch in Lambeau Field in Green Bay. And those 2 times are the only 2 times that that play has been successfully completed in over 65 years. Wow. And you wonder why you fill that ballpark. Well, I know you didn't fill it all entirely last year, but you wonder why you fill the ballpark? I know you had 44,000 no-shows. I hate to talk about this in this crowd, but you did. An average of, 5,000 or so a game. Where were they? At the time that those no-shows were not there, the Paradise Club here in Appleton was a sellout. Never a no-show at the Paradise Club. You wonder why? Listen, I came up there, I was working a game in Green Bay my 2nd year. You couldn't beg, buy, borrow, or steal a ticket in that place. The Packers were playing Minnesota. I had an incomplete pass over on my side. I signaled the ball incomplete, went over against the railing to pick it up. When I did, there was a little old lady sitting in the 2nd row with an empty seat next to her. I picked the ball up. I said, how come the seat's empty? She said, it belonged to my husband, and he died. I said, why didn't you give away the ticket? She said, I tried, but all my friends were going to the funeral. I mean, you people are fans. And not only that, you're creative. My wife and I went out for a walk this afternoon. We went up to Marshall Fields. When we came in on 41 out here, we saw a sign that said, hysterical marker, 3 miles. We were over there today. We saw your sculpture. Oh. A broken box with a broken watch chain around it. Lombardi was a member of the 7 Blocks of Granite. They moved it to Appleton at the head of the bridge. My wife said, what is it? I said, who knows? Who knows? Well, you see, this is not the first one of these banquets that I've spoken for, but I'm going to tell you something. Jim Hanachik and I were talking about this. To come into a community here in the Fox River Valley, Appleton, Wisconsin, home of Lawrence College. I went to Knox College. Mention that in a minute. And to see 1,800, 2,000 people, including those of you who are watching on closed-circuit television, is absolutely unbelievable. I've spoken for the All Sports Hall of Fame banquet in New York at the Waldorf Astoria. They draw about 800 less than this in New York. And so congratulations to you. And why do you come? I'll tell you why you come. Because you honor athletics of all kinds. That's what's made Red Smith, Lorraine, great, and a treasure in the hearts of these people. Because athletics means something. You see, athletics respond to change, not a rut. That's what football is all about. Forrest and Paul and Fuzzy and all the rest of you, Tony Canadeo sitting down here, Charlie Brock, all of you who have played at any level know that. And if people say, I can't change, I've always done it this way, and I tell them baloney. The Lord made us different. He gave us the power of choice. When we get up in the morning, we can be happy, sad, productive, unproductive. It's up to us. I talked the other night for a group of young bankers. I said to a young banker, how long did you work for the bank? He said, ever since the day they threatened to fire me. Now, he didn't... He didn't know how fast he could change. At that quarterback, if Starr called that 49 in the huddle or the 28, came up with the line of scrimmage, sees the defense set against that play, that's a 49 as a fullback wide right, 28, that's Hornung wide left. Come up the line of scrimmage with Thurston and Kramer leading the way. Oh boy, I'll never forget the first time I saw that first game up there. They called that 49, and I was out on the wings. It came my way, and out of the line came old number 63 and 64, Thurston and Jerry Kramer looking for somebody to knock down. All I knew was it wasn't going to be me. If you wanted to see gangbusters in action, buddy, that was it. Now, about 5 plays later, Schechter came over to me, and he says, you're playing too wide. I said, I saw that 63 and 64. I didn't know him then. I said, I saw that 63 and 64, Norm. I'm not getting in their way. He said, you're 15 rows up in the stands, Art. Come on down. So you call a 49 sweep in the huddle, comes up and Starr sees the defense set against that play. Does he buck his head against the stone wall? No. He calls an audible. He reaches down, tickles the center. That's what they do. That's why they all play centers. It feels so good. Look at Charlie Brock. He's wiggling. He reaches down, tickles the center, says 64, set, 48, blue. I don't know what that means, but 10 other offensive football players' jobs depend on them knowing what it means. That split end out here, so I don't block the linebacker anymore. I go down 4 steps, turn to the left, the quarterback throws into the wall. He goes for a first down or a touchdown. Why? Because he had the ability to change. True story. We had a game in San Diego about 10 years ago between San Diego and the then Oakland Raiders. John Madden was the coach of the Oakland Raiders. Remember John? Looked like an unmade waterbed. Now, I'm the line judge. I play on the line of scrimmage opposite the head linesman. Tony Batteri was the head linesman. He's over on the Oakland side. Batteri is an Italian. Where's Bill Martini? I do not tell Italian jokes. Marchetti is here. I do not tell Italian jokes. You know what's black and blue and floats in the river? A guy that tells Italian jokes. I ain't messing with him. Tony's over on the Oakland side. I'm over on the San Diego side. Now, we run that line of scrimmage in football, and 10 years ago, there was nobody on the face of this earth that knew more about the line of scrimmage than Tony Batteri and Art Holst. Now, question, football fans. How many men do you have to have in a line of scrimmage at football? Answer, 7. If you have 6, it's a foul. Why is that important? When you catch a team like Dallas, Dallas uses a lot of sets. They'll take the slot man over here on the right, bring him up the line of scrimmage, drop the wide receiver off. Or they take the tight end over here on the left, drop him back, bring the flanker up. Sometimes somebody forgets a signal. You end up with 6 guys on the line, throw the flag. I had that foul against Dallas in the Super Bowl. But the question further arises, can you legally have 8 men on the line? Answer, yes. 9, sure. 10, absolutely. You only have to have 1 man in the backfield. But what do you see? Play after play, game after game, you see 7 men on the line of scrimmage, and human beings are creatures of habit. We like to do it the same today as we did it yesterday, so we can be doing the same tomorrow because the rut gets comfortable. But I'm here tonight to tell you, as you celebrate, that the only difference between a rut and a grave is its length and its depth and how long you are in it. And Tony Viteri and I had worked over 200 football games in the National Football League, and we had never seen an 8-man line. Went absolutely true story. Second quarter, 0-0. Oakland's ball, 3rd and 8 on their own 40. Out of the huddle they come, up the line of scrimmage, and I count 8 guys on the line. Not trusting myself when I get over 5, and not having my PC with me, I counted them again. I still got 8. Now they sit for a second, which the offense must do on every play. After they sit for a second, 88 out here on the end of the line turned and went in motion diagonally into his own backfield, and my wheels are turning. I know that one man for the offense may be in motion parallel to or away from his line of scrimmage, but can he come from the line of scrimmage? I don't think so. That's not good enough. Oakland snapped the ball. I threw the flag, not too high. Stabler completed a pass for 25 yards, and what would have been a first down. I come running in. No, bring her back. Meanwhile, Ben Tompkins, our back judge, number 52, who worked the championship game this year, hollered out, "Great call, Art," so my confidence level went up. I come running in. No, bring her back. Illegal motion, but Terry comes running over from the other side. What is it? What is it? Italian? Tie their hands behind him, can't talk. He comes over. What is it? I said, illegal motion. He said, Art, he's going backwards. I said, Tony, he came from the end of the line. He says, so? Now, this is not a signal in football. It's also not a good tool in your business. He says, so? I said, so it's illegal. Go tell him. I don't want to talk to Madden. I'm smarter than that. I'm over on the San Diego side, and you know what? They think it's a great call. They don't know why. They just think it's great. Well, we bring the ball back. Oakland has to punt. 5 minutes later, Oakland's got the ball again. Now they got 3rd and 13, way back on their own 30. Out of the huddle they come. 8-man line, 88 in the end. Sit for a second. Now, 88 out here knows he fouled last time because he heard his number over the PA system. But he does not know why. So this time he's taking no chances. He didn't do a thing but turn around and go in motion straight backwards. He's going out of the ballpark. They snap the ball. I threw the flag a mile in the air. Stabler completes a 50-yard bomb to Cliff Branch down on the other end of the field. And I come running in. No, bring her back. Illegal motion, but Terry comes running over from the other side. He said, Art, what the hell are you doing? I said, Tony, it is illegal for that guy to go in motion from the end of that line. He said, well, you go tell him. Now, Madden's over there. He's selling light beer. I came over, I said, hi, John. He said, Art, what the hell are you doing to us? I said, John, it is illegal for that guy to go in motion from the end of that line, and this is what he said, verbatim, absolutely true story. He said, Art, this is our secret play. True story. He says, the only thing we practiced all week. I said, you run that thing 10 times today, I'm going to throw 10 flags. We went at the half. What was the first thing I did? Before I went to the John? Right, grab the rule book. Can't carry that thing on the field. It's bulky and it looks funny. Say, just second forced. I'll look that up. Here's what it says, football fans. After all 11 players for the offense have come to a full 1-second stop, one offensive player may be in motion parallel to or away from his line of scrimmage, comma, and he must be a backfield player. Backfield player defined as one who was set for at least 1 second, at least 1 yard off the ball. Great call. Naturally, But somewhere, sometime, in some meeting, somebody had said to me, in order to be legally in motion, you have to sit for 1 second in that backfield, and that piece of information had stuck and prepared me for change. What will you take from this awards banquet tonight to help you be better tomorrow in what you do? To help you be a better parent, to help you be a better citizen, to build a better community, to build a better life. And just in case you're wondering, you think that change isn't a part of our life? Just in case you are wondering where the Green Bay Packers are, or as Lombardi used to say, the Green Bay Packers are for 1987, Coach, you're tied for first right now. We can change gradually, we can change in a hurry. I was at a beautiful banquet in Atlanta, sitting up at the head table, sitting next to the wife of the chairman, a lovely woman, sequin dress. At the end of the dinner, her husband got up to introduce the head table, as Bob did tonight. When he did, she reached in her purse and pulled out a cigar. I don't mean one of those dinky, skinny things like the women smoke nowadays. I mean a big, fat American stogie. I turned to her, I said, "Is that for me?" She said, "No, I think I'll burn this in the cell." And she lit it up, did a great job of smoking it. I was impressed. Finally, I turned to her, I said, "How long have you been smoking cigars?" She said, "Ever since my husband came home and found a warm cigar butt in my ashtray." Next reason you're here, it's a game of discipline and loyalty. Paul talked about it tonight. 40 guys that love one another, with a coach that at times they hated. And I'm sure there are times they don't like you very much, Forrest. I hate to tell you that, but there are probably times they don't like you. But that goes with the territory. There were times they didn't like me. There were times they didn't like Jim, because we were symbols of authority. You see, we were the ones that had to enforce the rules. Coaches have to enforce the policies of a team, and he has to call balls and strikes. And you, Father, have to convince people that the Lord did not hand Moses 10 suggestions. And you see, I can't think of a team in all the time that I've been around the National Football League that had the loyalty that this bunch had. And I can't think of a banquet that I've attended that has exhibited the loyalty that I've seen in Appleton, Wisconsin in this last 24 hours. And I'll tell you something, you'll learn something about that when you officiate. We had a game in Chicago one time between the Bears and the Packers in Soldiers Field. I called a clip against the Bears that took the winning touchdown away from them in the fourth quarter. Now, clipping is blocking from the rear. Blocking from the side is not a clip, but this is one of those iffy ones from right in here that gets you in trouble with everybody. I got torn apart on television by these guys that don't know the rules. I got torn apart in the newspapers. The next week, we're in New Orleans. We're sitting in the Marriott Hotel with 5 rolls of slow-motion film to look at, as every crew looks at every Saturday night, with a critique sheet from the league office, and they got a big red question mark by that place that, "Check this, we don't think it's a clip." Now, we ran the play about 4 times. 4 of the guys wouldn't take a stand, but Tony Viteri, my good friend, the head linesman, with whom I differed occasionally, jumped up and he said, "Art, you know better. That was no clip." Now, I was on a short fuse. I jumped up and I said, "Tony, it was a clip." He said, "It wasn't a clip," and we ended up toe-to-toe and had to be pulled apart. And I've seen that many times. But I'll tell you something I've never seen. I have never seen one football official in the National Football League show up another one on the field, or a baseball umpire either. If that back judge calls some little bump pass interference, and the guy couldn't have caught the ball with a butterfly net, you don't see the field judge coming running over saying, "Oh, my God, Larry, how could you call that?" He comes over nodding his head, smiling, saying, "Larry, dummy, pick up your flag." He says, "Pick up your flag." He couldn't have caught the thing with a net. You talk about loyalty. After that game, we live in Peoria, Illinois. That's about 160 miles from Chicago. And there's a farmer who lives in Fairbury, Illinois, a little town up halfway between where we live and Chicago. He's a great Bear fan. Well, he runs into me on the street one day in Peoria, and he said to me, he said, Art, it's a great thrill to see somebody that I know on the field in the Bear games. And he said, if you ever want to come deer hunting, he said, I got 200 acres of timber. I got a lot of deer. Bring your officiating friends and come up. You don't even have to call me. So after that game in Chicago, when I called that clip to beat the Bears, I told the other guys in the dressing room, I said, anybody want to go deer hunting, let me know. And Bob Fruddick, our referee, he's from Denver, he said, I'd like to go. So he flew out Tuesday. Wednesday morning, 4 o'clock, we're up. We got the guns. We drive to Fairbury, get there about 5:45. I parked out by the fence, left Bob sitting in the car. I went up the door and knocked one light in the kitchen. The farmer came out, stuck his hand out, and he said, I don't want to tell you right now. Shook hands. He said, I saw that Bear-Packer game on television. That clip you called against the Bears was a great call. I don't care what the Chicago Tribune said. I said, well, thanks a lot. He said, I'll tell you another thing. You got the best referee in the National Football League. He's got the sharpest signals. He knows the rules. He's the best in the league. I said, he's in the car. He's going hunting with me. He said, you tell him he's the best referee in the NFL. I said, I'll do it. He said, would you do me a favor before you go out? I said, anything you want. He said, you see that old mule out by the barn? There's an old swayback mule out there. He said, that mule's 26 years old. That mule's got cancer. I can't bear to shoot him. Before you go hunting, would you mind shooting my mule? I said, I don't want to shoot your mule. I said, I came here to hunt deer. I can't miss that damn thing. He hadn't moved since I've been here. He said, well, you'll be doing me a favor if you shoot my mule. I said, okay, I'll shoot him. He said, thanks a lot. We'll have you a hot breakfast when you get back. He went back into the house. I went back out to the car. On my way out there, my sense of humor got me. I worked myself up into a fake lather, got in the car, slammed the door. Frederick said, what's the matter? I said, that old fool won't let us hunt. He said, won't let us hunt? I flew all the way from Denver. He won't let us hunt. I said, no, I saw that Bear game last week. He said, that clip I called against the Bears was the worst call he ever saw. And worse than that, he said that guy that wears the funny colored hat, that's you, buddy, was the worst referee in the National Football League. And when he said that, it was too much for me. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoot his damn mule. I took my gun and bang, I dropped that thing in one shot. Well, I bit my lip to keep from laughing. Before I could turn my head, I heard his gun go bang, bang. He said, Art, I got 2 of his cows. Let's get the hell out of here. Now that's loyalty, folks. Next thing, problem solving. When Paul kicked that field goal after a fair catch, problem solving. Fuzzy and Jerry leading this guy around the side on a 28 or Taylor on a 49, problem solving. And you know what happened at the end of this? I got to tell you. True story. After that kick went over the crossbar, I signaled good and then shot the gun. Half was over. Shot the gun. We were at the old dressing room, north end of the stadium, and they had a cop assigned to each one of us. So not that anything go wrong, but they wanted us to meet the Green Bay policeman. And true story, we're running off the field, and I'd know the guy today. Some guy in a gray jacket leaped over the top of the front row down toward the north end of the stadium and ran right out to the middle of the field. We didn't have all that security that we have now. He ran right out to the middle of the field, ran up to me, and he said, you son of a bitch, you're always figuring out some new way to beat the Bears. And of course you have problems. You have problems in football. You have problems winning games because 27 other ball clubs want to win as bad as you do. You have problems. You have problems in business. You have problems with your kids. Problems, problems, problems. But the world's full of problems. And you want to do something without problems? I'll tell you what to do. Coach track. All you got to do is tell them, stay to the left and come back as quick as you can. And you could have it worse. You could have it worse. You could be a blow dryer salesman at a Hare Krishna rally. You talk about a born loser. I spoke in South Carolina. I met a guy that had a kidney transplant. He got it from a bedwetter. I went to Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois. We played Lawrence. We played the Vikings. I went to Knox College. We were famous. I enrolled there in 1939. We were famous athletically for one thing, 28 consecutive football losses. We led the world in football losses. When I was a freshman, we broke that record, and I'm proud of it, and I'm going to tell you how it was. We were getting beat as usual in the fourth quarter. We're down 21-20, down 1 point with 4 minutes to go, when somebody in the stands threw a firecracker. The other team ran off the field. 8 plays later, we scored. On a field goal. That was partially blocked. And the problem in football is, how are you going to get the ball from that end of the field to that end in your possession, or if you're on defense, how are you going to stop the other guy? And I have a lot of young football officials say to me, I know the rule book cold. I tell them, good, so what? You're supposed to know the rules. I'm interested in your position, judgment, physical condition, guts. You're supposed to know your business. I'm interested in how much you care about people, because I got news for you. You honor a man tonight who cared about people. That's why this banquet is here, because your husband cared. And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you see, that means grabbing a hold of problems. Being able to face them square in the nose. Even had problems in church. I used to go to a little Lutheran church, Father, up in Minnesota. Had one of those high choir lofts. Had one of those women that used to sing soprano, hit high C. You know those women that hit high C, they always reach for it like an orange on a tree. They go right up after it. One Sunday, this gal goes up after that high C. Whoo! Head first she went, right out of the choir loft. On the way down, her foot caught in the chandelier, and there she is, swinging in front of the congregation with her dress hanging down over her head. Well, that minister was equally occasioned. He leaped to his feet. He said, the first man that looks at her will be struck blind. And Ole and Sven, 2 old Swedes, were sitting right down on the front row. Ole poked Sven, and he said, you know, Sven, I think I'm going to risk one eye. Can I have 10 more minutes?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't blame you, fellas. It gets worse. Risking our free way of life, risking business, risking football, risking officiating, risking umpiring. But you cannot have, in a free nation, reward in his hand without being willing to take risk in this one. Some of you Packer players are here tonight. You take a risk every time you get taped and go on that field. Also, it's teamwork. Teamwork, a respect for the dignity of difference in people. That's what I call it. You're only as strong as your weakest link. How many times you've looked at film, all of you that have played, I've looked at film, where 10 guys on offense do it right, one guy blows a signal, and what would have been a touchdown goes for a 3-yard loss. When I was a senior in college, we had what should have been the greatest football team in our history. 2 guards, 6'3", 2 tackles, 260, an end that could run like a gazelle, a fullback built like a gorilla. We lost 10 straight football games. We had a quarterback that stuttered. And a center that was ticklish. Every play was, woo, you know, how you going to... Next question, do you understand successful failure? This is a game of failure. Football, baseball, the things you support here in Appleton. The Appleton Foxes don't win every game. They're not going to, ever. Well, you can't, I shouldn't say that. They might. But that's not the way it is. And in athletics, we learn about failure. A guy in football learns to get knocked down, get up, and if he keeps getting up, maybe he blocks the punt and wins the ball game. Mature attitude toward failure. Denver won half a football game Sunday. New York won the whole game. Football's a game of failure. And football's an ecumenical game. Father, I worked Super Bowl 12, and I worked that game with 3 Catholics, and I'm a Presbyterian. And if you don't know what a Presbyterian is, I'm going to tell you. Presbyterians and Baptists who started drinking can't afford to be an Episcopalian. You find 4 Episcopalians, you're sure to find a 5th, I'll tell you that. How many Catholics here tonight? Let me see your hands. Catholics. I went to Mass with the Catholics for 15 years at football. I used to go to that beautiful church in Green Bay before the Packer games. That church, I don't know, my directions are all screwed up right near the Holiday Inn. Used to go up there, I heard some of the best homilies I ever heard in that church. Plus the fact that they always prayed for us. That priest always had a sixth sense about who we were. Help the officials do a good job today, and may they help the Packers win. I never will forget that. I went to Mass with those Catholics for 15 years. You know, the Protestants don't get in business till 11. We had to be at the park at 11. And I finally figured out that there are 2 key words in the Catholic religion. Rhythm and bingo. And I'll tell you another thing, girls, if you ain't got rhythm, you're going to hit bingo, too, I'll tell you that. As Judge Cannon knows. But you see, we have a God-given gift, not only to be able to think creatively, but also to be able to laugh. We're the only animals that can laugh. You realize that? Terry Morawski is sitting down here, Polish. You know who Alexander Graham Slinsky was? First telephone pole. You heard about the Polish guy that's driving from Appleton to Milwaukee. He saw a sign along the road that said clean restrooms ahead. He cleaned 163 before he got to Milwaukee. Now let me tell you about that joke, Terry. I'm a Swede. That's a handicap, too. I grew up in Illinois with the Swansons, Johnson. I'm Swedish. That joke I tell in the Polish, the restrooms, that's the one they used to tell on us dumb Swedes 50 years ago. Hear me now. The biggest form of bigotry that you and I will ever see is the bigotry that permits us to laugh at everyone else, but forbids us from laughing at ourselves. And if we can't laugh at ourselves, we don't have the license to laugh at others. Paul Hornung, great athlete, Hall of Famer, a credit to his profession, his community, his team, laughed at the mistake he made. Forrest Gregg laughed tonight. That's tough to do after a tough season. It's tough to do. I'm Swedish. I have to tell you about Ole and Sven. They went near Houghton up in northern Wisconsin. They shot a big buck. They're dragging that buck out of the woods with a tail. When along come the farmer. He said, "What's the matter with you two dummies?" The Lord put a set of horns on them, natural handles. Why don't you grab on the horns? It's easier. They went around, grabbed them by the horns, drug for about a half an hour. After about a half an hour, Ole turned to Sven. He said, "You know, Sven, I think this is easier." He said, "Yes, but Ole, you keep getting further away from the pickup truck." We're not too smart either. And you can find fun in anything. That's what I'm telling you. You can find fun in anything. I said to Ken Vandervelden, I said, at the cocktail hour, I said to Ken Vandervelden from Kaukauna, I said, "I'm going to tell you a Polak joke." He said, "I'm Dutch." I said, "That's okay. I'll tell it slow." I was surprised he was here. But they let him take his thumb out of the dike, and he came. Well, we got to get out of here. You're too good an audience. And I'll tell you something. This is a great audience. Great. If you ever need a letter of recommendation as an audience, let me know. I'll write it. You're great. I've looked out here tonight, Bob. I haven't seen one person that isn't laughing. This is good. Once in a while, you get up in front of an audience like this, you look out, you see some hatchet-faced old biddy. like she was weaned on a pickle. Yeah. Hell, you can't make that woman laugh. She hasn't laughed since her honeymoon. And then all she did was snicker. Athletics are also communications. Get the message across. Ever heard a blown signal fuzz? Ever seen a signal blown, a play blown because somebody didn't hear something, Coach? You bet. You can be misunderstood. You will be misunderstood. The biggest flaps I have ever been in, and I haven't got the time to go into them, in officiating, haven't been because somebody didn't know the rules or didn't have guts or wasn't in the right position. The biggest flaps I've ever been in professional football and the National Football League were because somebody didn't get the word. If you can be misunderstood, you will be. We had an ad in the paper at home the other night that said, man to sell dynamite must be willing to travel unexpectedly. A football coach is teaching a Polish kid how to kick field goals. He said, I'll hold the ball for you. When I nod my head, kick it. Let me read you these things I cut out of church bulletins. These are for real. These are out of church bulletins. This afternoon there'll be a meeting in the north and south ends of the church, and the children will be baptized at both ends. Thursday at 7 there'll be a meeting of the Little Mothers Club. All ladies wishing to become little mothers will please meet the minister in his study at 7 p.m. Tuesday. This being Easter Sunday, we'll ask Mrs. Johnson to come forward and lay an egg on the altar. Can you stand one more? On Sunday, a special collection will be taken up to defray expenses of a new carpet. Will all those wishing to do something on the carpet please sign up? Miller Brewing Company, a prime supporter of this banquet, has produced the commercials that Jim Honachuk is in and have gotten the message across to this country through humor that light beer, Miller Lite, tastes great and it's less filling. Communications, don't you see? Like the coach, the football team, they're tied up 14-14, 14-14. Now, they get the ball back on their own 15-yard line. They got 50 seconds left in the game. The first-string quarterback is out with a broken leg. The second-string quarterback just went out with a dislocated shoulder. They're down to the third-string quarterback, and he's the worst quarterback anybody ever saw. Every time he hands the ball off, he fumbles. Every time he throws it, it's intercepted. But he's the team kicker. He can kick hell out of a football. Now the coach gets him over and he says, listen, son, all I want you to do is go in there and run 3 quarterback sneaks and kick that ball just as far as you can kick it. The kid says, what's that? He said, 3 sneaks. Get in there, 3 sneaks and punt. The kid goes in on the 15-yard line. 50 seconds left in the game. He takes that first snap. A big hole opens over the right guard. He goes over the right guard out to his own 40. First and 10, the fans begin to yell. Now there are 35 seconds left in the game. He takes a second snap. He runs that second quarterback sneak. He goes from his own 45-yard line down to the other guy's 20-yard line. The fans are going crazy. Now there are 10 seconds left in the game. He runs that third sneak. He goes from the 20-yard line all the way down to the 1-yard line. He's tackled on the 1-yard line. First and goal, 5 seconds left. You guessed it. He kicked the ball out of the stadium. And the coach got him out to the sideline and he said, what on earth were you thinking about when you kicked that ball? He said, I was thinking about what a stupid coach we got. Communications, last question. We're going home. Are we men and women of creative action? Here's where you lay it on the line. I've often said in football officiating, you can know that rule book cold. Same with you, Jim. I've seen rule book lawyers when I first started officiating. Guys that knew the rules, and they got out there and saw some guy's head torn off and said, what the hell is that? You can know that rule book cold. You can be in the best physical condition, but the real question comes when you ask yourself, am I willing to throw the flag for pass interference on a 1-yard line with 80,000 people looking down my throat? and 110 million live on television we had in Super Bowl 12? That's the question. And I got a baptism over here in Lambeau Field. You'll remember it, you guys. 1965, the next to last game of the season, playing Minnesota, 25-19 Green Bay. 25-19 Green Bay. Francis Tarkenton went back and threw a pass to Hall in the end zone, coming down the sideline, and Herb Adderley, that great defensive back for Green Bay, had him boxed in perfectly against the sideline, and at the 2-yard line, Hall reached out and shoved Adderley in the back and caught the ball in the end zone for what would have been the winning touchdown and would have given a championship to Baltimore, and I had the flag down on the 2-yard line. Herb turned around and said, "He pushed me." I said, "There's the flag." I went out to Norm Schachter, and I said, "I got offensive pass interference on the 2, no touchdown." 15 yards it was at that time, 15 yards from here. And I was excited. I was in my second year, 65. I ran up, and that's the way I said it to him. I said, "I've got offensive pass interference on the 2, ball caught in the end zone, no touchdown." And incidentally, Bill Brown had come up to me, the fullback from Minnesota, and had screamed at me some invectives, "Pardon me," things like that. And I had eliminated him from the contest. I said, "You're out of the ball game." Threw him out of the game. He said, "You can't throw me out." I said, "No, because you're already gone." And I said, "And number 30 Brown is out of the ball game." True story. Schachter looked at me and grinned, and he said, "Art, take 2 steps backward and say it again. You're spitting in my face." And then 20 seconds later, 4th down for Minnesota. They threw a pass to Red Phillips on a post corner pattern, and he dove and caught the ball. The ball hit his arms and bounced up to his chest, and his first contact was with the pylon. And I was right there at the goal line, at the intersection of the goal line and the sideline. All I remembered yelling was, "No!" I didn't even remember signaling. But the local TV guy, they had it all over the country the next day, and he took me over, and sure enough, I signaled incomplete pass. They wrote those up in Sports Illustrated as the $1 million calls. But let me tell you about the humor. I kept the time at that time. The official time wasn't kept on the scoreboard clock. It was on the line judge's wrist. And the Packers got the ball back, and Starr was stalling the last 23 seconds or so out. I had the clock watch up like this with the gun, so I wasn't looking anywhere else. Schachter had gone to the other officials and said, "When I cut the ball for the last play, let's leave the field." I'm standing out there like this. The clock came down to 0. I shot the gun. True story. Shot the gun, looked up. There wasn't another official on the field in Green Bay. And I had to go up through that tunnel with the Minnesota Vikings chewing me a new one. This is all true. I've never told this from the stage. I got up, I got into the dressing room, opened the door, and Schachter was standing there with a big grin, and he stuck his hand out, and he said, "Art, don't worry about it." He said, "Someday, I know a guy that died with a cough like yours." Of course, he was in another guy's closet, but... Schachter stuck his hand out and he said, "Art, don't worry about it." He said, "Someday we'll all look back on this and laugh and say, who was that guy that was with us for a couple of years that made those calls at Green Bay?" But then he said the thing that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. He said, "Art, just remember, 800 million Chinese don't even know we played." A football team got beat. The halfback on the losing team got on a train. Pretty soon the official that made the call that he swore beat him got on and sat down right beside him. The train took off. Nobody else was on the car. The train stopped at a small town. A grandmother and her gorgeous granddaughter got on and sat down right across the aisle. The kid is stealing glances at the pretty girl when all of a sudden the train shot into a dark tunnel. No lights in the tunnel, no lights in the train. In that pitch darkness was the sound of a kiss and then a loud slap, and the train shot out into the daylight. The grandmother was proud for 2 reasons. First, because she had a granddaughter pretty enough to get a kiss from a perfect stranger, and second, because the girl was nice enough to slap the guy. Now the granddaughter, on the other hand, was sure that this handsome kid had tried to kiss her in the dark, had missed, kissed her grandmother, and gotten slapped. The football official was certain that the halfback had leaned across the aisle in the dark and kissed a pretty girl, and she, being a nice girl, had swung, missed, and hit him, the official, right in the face. But the halfback was the only one on that car that really knew what happened. He had leaned over into the aisle, kissed the back of his hand, and just slapped hell out of the official.
subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when we post another great episode or interview. Download the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your support.